In this week's Tableau Tip Tuesday, I want to show you a couple of things that I've noticed during the Makeover Monday project and some ways that I'm seeing people use tick marks in Tableau. Let me explain what I'm talking about. The easiest way to explain the problem is to perhaps look at some data, maybe by month. And let's just simply look at sales. And one of the things that we'll notice here, first I'm going to go ahead and hide my field labels, is you'll see I've got these little tick marks between each of the months. When you have a discrete pill on either your columns or rows, you're going to get tick marks between the items in the list. So for example, I've got tick marks between January and February, between February and March, etc. So this can be a bit confusing because sometimes what I'll see is I'll see people clean up the visualization by doing something like maybe removing the row and column dividers. And then I oftentimes will go ahead and put an axis ruler on instead to just give me the left and the right. And what can be confusing here is I'll see people then go ahead and add grid lines. So if you see I put grid lines on here, this can easily give people the impression that where these grid lines cross the line is where the actual data point is, but that's not actually the case. So if I click on the color shelf and I turn on my markers, you'll see that the dots are actually between these lines. So when you're using discrete months, you want to make sure you don't turn the grid lines on because the grid lines align with the axis tick. So you see the axis ticks right here. So let's now look at the same example, but let's consider it in a continuous date. So let's do a new sheet. And this time, I'm going to right-click and drag order date to the columns. And I'll go ahead and pick month. And let's go ahead and put sales on the rows. And I'll limit this maybe just 2015 just to make it a little bit easier. Okay. So now you'll see because it's continuous, Tableau went ahead and put my grid lines in there. But let's clean it up to make it look like the other visualization. So I'm going to go ahead and format my borders and remove my rows and columns. And then I'm going to go to my lines. And for now, let's go ahead and remove the grid lines. And let's turn our axis rulers on. All right, so we have a very similar visualization. If I come back over here and I set this to entire view, you'll see they look very, very similar. Let me go ahead and filter this one by 2015 also, just for consistency. Okay, so you see the lines look very similar. But you'll notice, because this is a continuous axis, look where my tick mark is here. It may be a little bit hard to see, but you see where my mouse is moving down here. On January, you'll see it's in the middle. In February, it's in the middle. So if I turn my markers on again, and then go ahead and add my grid lines for my columns. Let's put these dashed grid lines back on. You'll see that they align perfectly with where the dot actually crosses the line. So the caution here is when you're using grid lines, know that they align with your tick marks and that your tick marks are dependent on whether you have a discrete or continuous pill in your view. So with that in mind, make sure that if you're using time dimensions and you're using grid lines, that you use a continuous date field so that people don't get confused with where the line crosses, with where the grid lines cross the line that is drawn. So for example here, it might be easy, in our discrete example, it might be easy for people to assume that this data point right here, where the grid line crosses the blue line, is January. But really, it's here where the dot is. So that's it for this week. Just a little word of caution for you, and have a good day.